Well, if you've gotten to this part of the website, you're asking yourself the same question every client has asked me in over 20 years, and that is, what is my case worth? And the bad news is that it's not a science. It's not going to be an algebraic equation. The good news is that we've got a worksheet right here that you can print out, and in the next 3 to 5 minutes, I'm going to explain to you how you can get a basic idea of what your case is worth. If you go over to my right on the left-hand side of your screen, you're going to see a little icon there to download a form. It's a worksheet, and I'm going to walk you through that in the general steps that you'll need to take to evaluate what your case is worth. So print that out, and we'll walk through that together. Now, first you need to understand that damages in a personal injury case come in kind of two types: compensatory damages and punitive damages. Punitive damages are very, very rare. Compensatory damages are designed to compensate you for what you've lost because of your injuries. For example, medical bills and medical expenses, out-of-pocket expenses for prescriptions or work loss, wage loss, that kind of thing. Those are compensatory damages to compensate you for what you've lost. So let's talk about how this worksheet breaks that out. First, we're going to divide those damages into two categories: tangible damages and intangible damages. You're saying, well, Marcus, what's that? Tangible damages are those damages that you have receipts for. Tangible damages would include medical costs, medical bills, prescriptions that you have receipts for. Would also be lost wages for time that you've missed from work. Those are tangible damages, and sometimes those are easier to calculate. Intangible damages are not only difficult to calculate, but they're also a little controversial. Intangible damages are things you don't have receipts for. You've probably heard of pain and suffering. That's an intangible damage. Also, loss of enjoyment of life. Those things that you cannot do anymore that you used to enjoy doing, but because of your injuries, you've lost that ability. You're entitled to compensation for that loss, but for intangible damages, that can be a little tricky. So let's look at the form for just a second together. Okay, now tangible damages are divided into two subcategories. If you look on the form, you'll see tangible damages, and then you'll see past and future. Now the reality is, if you got into a car accident last month, and for this last month you've been out of work, you've got lost wages for that month. But what if you can't go back to that job because of your injuries? Well, then you have the same lost wages on into the future for as long as it takes you to recover to where you can go back to work. So if you look at the form, you're going to see lines right there that say medical bills, bills that are in the past, and medical bills that are going to be incurred in the future. And you'll also see medical bills, and this gets a little tricky, medical bills that have been paid versus medical bills that are owing. Because a lot of us get our bills paid through different sources. If you're in the military, you've got your bills paid through one source. If you've got private insurance, through another source. Again, if it's a car accident, you might have had some of your bills paid from your no-fault insurance or your PIP. You're not eligible to be compensated for the bills that you didn't have to pay. You're only eligible to be compensated for the bills that you paid out of your pocket or that you owe to another source. Now, it gets kind of confusing here, and I'm not going to teach you everything that you would need to know. It's not 100% scientific. But if your insurance company paid some of your bills, they have a right to be repaid. They have a right of subrogation. So some of those bills come on here. But as a general rule, when you look at the form, you're going to see a line that says, what are the bills that have been paid? What are the bills that are owing? You can do the math, add them together, and that equals your total past out-of-pocket medical bills. Same thing with lost wages. When you work through this form, you'll see a line for lost wages to date, and then lost wages projected into the future, okay? The past and the present. And also, you'll see that under lost wages, if you've been reimbursed already through a workers' compensation benefit or lost wages through your PIP, again, which pays 60%, then you're not entitled to get paid twice. You're only entitled to be compensated for what you've lost. So you work through that sheet, and if you see the first page of that worksheet under tangible damages, you're also going to see a list for miscellaneous. Now, I can't predict here all of the out-of-pocket expenses you might have suffered. Let's say you had to hire a babysitter to watch your kids while you went to the doctor. There's lines on there for gas and mileage to be reimbursed. Whatever it is that you spent, you're entitled to be compensated for in the big picture when you calculate your damages. Okay, we've talked about medical bills, lost wages, and miscellaneous. Those are tangible damages, things that you have receipts for, things that you can show that you paid or that you owe, and you can show them with receipts. And if you add those up on that sheet, you'll get your tangible damages. And you divide that again into past, which you've already lost, and into the future, which sometimes is a little tricky to project. So let's talk about your tangible damages into the future, because there's a couple of keys to that. For example, we've provided on the form, and you'll be able to download this. When you download the form and you print the form, you'll see that there's a couple of websites to go to, because there's some calculations that you have to make into the future. For example, one of them is your life expectancy. Let's say that you're going to have to pay $50 a month to fill your prescriptions for the rest of your life. Let's say the doctor says, I'm sorry, but your injuries are going to require that you take this anti-inflammatory medication for the remainder of your life. Well, how do you know how long that is? We hope it's a long time. Well, there's actually a United States Census document called the mortality tables that predict how long all of us are going to live. And if you go to those tables, if you go on the form, and if you look over here to my right, and you see that form, and you download that form, and you see on there that website, if you go to that website, or if you contact us, we'll be happy to mail or to fax or to email to you the form. But that census will show what your life expectancy is. So you'll see on the form, you'll calculate your cost of service per year, that $50 for medicine, and you'll multiply that by the number of years that your life expectancy is likely to be. And if you're a middle-aged guy like me, and my life expectancy is 40 years, and let's say my medicine cost is $1,000 a year, then I can reasonably claim $40,000 in my lifelong compensatory damages for those medical costs. That's how that works. Also, if you look at projecting your lost wages, if you look at how much time you're going to be out of work, and you want to project that into the future, there's a different form for that, and we've got a different website. Again, if you look on the form, you can download. We've provided a site that you can go to, but we'll be happy to provide this to you. And that's your work life expectancy, which is a little different, because most people don't work until the day they die. Most people retire. And so your work life expectancy is calculated by Social Security and other governmental entities, and then you can calculate how many years you were likely going to work, and you fill that in your lost wages. Your lost wages per year times the number of years to your work-life expectancy equals your future tangible loss for wages. And the form will show you that on page 2. Pretty simple stuff. Here's the hard part. The hard part is when we get to those intangible damages. Now, people never know the right way to calculate intangible damages. Intangible damages are the loss of the ability to do the things that you used to do, the pain. There is no formula for this. And if you look at the third page, it gets pretty slim, because for intangible damages, it's just an estimate times the number of years of your life expectancy. Intangible damages are the hardest part. And since I've been doing this a long time, I've come to accept that intangible damages are such a feel. You have to somehow come to understand, how are these injuries affecting my life? What is it that I can no longer do that I used to do? For example, I used to be an avid golfer, but now that my wrist has been broken and I've had to put pins in my wrist, I can no longer swing a golf club. Now, I don't golf, but if I did, that would be a valuable loss to me. I wouldn't be able to do what I used to like to do. How do you calculate that? Very difficult. If you look at the third page, the best that we can tell you is that you're entitled to the compensation for a reasonable value for your loss of enjoyment of life or your pain and your suffering. And you multiply that by the years of your life expectancy. Now, I can tell you that the value of anything is a little bit of an imprecise science, right? If you want to sell your truck or your car and you look at the value, well, there are guides. You can look on the Blue Book value, you can look online, but to you, your car may have more value, and to a particular buyer, your car may have more value. Well, your compensatory damages in an accident case is just the same as that. It has more value to you than it will ever have to an insurance company or an adjuster. But if you use this form and you work through the steps, you should be able to get a ballpark idea of what your compensatory damages would be in a claim. Now, the hard part is thinking through all of the future costs that you may encounter, because you only get one chance. When you settle your case, you're going to sign a release. And so you've got to have the full compensatory value at that time. Now, this has just been a guide, just a kind of a rough worksheet to walk through to give you an idea. It's not intended to be a substitute for years of experience. I would encourage you to talk to a lawyer that's board certified in this business or has been doing it for a while. And you know what? You'll get a lot of disagreement even between lawyers, but that's okay. In the community of values, and from one jury to another, the value can change. But with this worksheet, you'll have an idea of what your case is worth.